My name is Mindy Cady, and on behalf of Sheriff Garvey and the entire Hampshire Sheriff's Office, we'd like to welcome you here to our 10th annual Reentry Roundtable Breakfast. Back in 2004, we were tasked with finding a way to communicate with everyone who works with the people that we serve on a daily basis. And over the course of the past 10 years, you know, many of the people who are in this room are here as the result of the efforts that started 10 years ago. Many people said to us, you're not going to get probation to the table. They're not going to be there. And I'll tell you something, and you'll hear more about this particular gentleman a little bit later on, but you know, starting out with Chief Tom Foley, we have had probation here every single month for the past 10 years as part of our Reentry Roundtable. And this Reentry Roundtable encompasses all kinds of people from our community. You know, back in October, we were all part of a summit, and during that summit, everyone got the opportunity to sit and be a part of what places do very well. And people gave presentations, and there are people in this room. I see Marty here. Do you have questions about numbers or how to track things, how to keep statistics? You know, she's right here. She's in the room today. There are, Jen Sordy's here from After Incarceration Services. Do you have questions about programs like that? You know, she's here today. Dominic and people from the VA and Soldier On are here. These people actually work inside of our facility. We have an ongoing, very strong relationship with ServiceNet, who is our mental health and substance abuse provider in the local community. Two of the people that work for ServiceNet actually work here within the facility, one of which devotes most of his time to mental health services and the other directly to reentry services. So over the years, we have a really, really rich combination of law enforcement. Chris Provenost is here today from the Amherst Police Department, and we've got a variety of representatives from state and local police departments who are here on a monthly basis to contribute to what this is. We also have a number of social service providers. There are organizations in Amherst, there are organizations in Holyoke, there are organizations in East Hampton and Northampton who are here on a monthly basis to help us to address the needs of the people that are leaving us. And what this does is it gives us an opportunity to sort of show off one of the things that we do really well. You know, everyone does reentry, most everyone does it pretty well in their particular way. And you know, we've been at this for a little while, and one of the things that we happen to do pretty well is we run this reentry roundtable. And, you know, for those of you who are familiar with counseling methods, you know, Rogerian therapy would say it's all about the relationship. And it's all about the relationship with the client, and you know something? It's all about the relationships between our agencies as well. And these meetings would not work well if we didn't have them. You know, to supplement all this, someone from the district attorney's office, generally at the end of each roundtable, you know, heads up a meeting with the individuals that we know are high-risk individuals and has a particular talk with these guys. You know, what kinds of services have you participated in? Have you not been interested in any services? If not, why? We want to help you. We want to support you. We're here to do all that. And you know something? If you don't want any of it, understand that we're having this conversation with you right now because we want to help you. We would prefer to be on the, you know, lend our hand side of giving you guys what it is you need when you leave. So this takes an enormous effort. You know, we have, there are a number of representatives here today from the self-help community. We have all kinds of AA meetings that go on here inside the facility, and not only that, but people meet with their sponsors here too. When they're introduced to a sponsor, they have private time in the press box to be able to meet with a sponsor. We go to outside AA meetings on a daily basis. There's a whole group of us that goes out to the community and attends meetings daily. And these people, they're part of our community. They're here today. They're a vibrant and rich part of helping people to make the transition from a place like this to the other side. And we don't want to be known as like the last door on the left, or, you know, we want people to know that we're here to help you. I don't want to say when you leave, good luck, you know, hope you make it out there. I want a phone call, you know, and I'm speaking for our entire staff. We want to hear from you. We want to help you. Pick up the phone. Let us know what it is you need, because you know something, that's what we're here for. And today is really a celebration of the entire group of people that gets together on a regular basis to be able to accomplish this. You know, over the last few years, we hear a lot about, you know, step down for state inmates. And, you know, we've been part of that for a long time. Back in the 70s, we started taking state inmates, and in the 1980s, the mods were built for that particular purpose. So in many ways, we've done a lot of hand-to-mouth kinds of work with individuals who we have for a period of time, and they're entering our communities, and we've been stepping them down for many, many years. Today just happens to be, you know, a more formal opportunity to be able to celebrate some of the particular things that we do here. You know, we're a little place. I remember speaking with Undersecretary McCroom, and I referred to us as the little engine that could. You know, we didn't get the money. We never get the money. We don't get the resources to be able to do the kinds of things that we do, and yet we're tasked with helping these people in whatever way we possibly can. And I'm very, very proud to work for a sheriff who directs us in that manner, who expects us to be professional and to never let go of that hand until we're ready to hand them off, or until that person decides that this is, you know, that he's ready to move on. And, you know, it's through his direction that we get everything. So I'd really like to introduce our leader, Sheriff Garvey.
I told her to say all those things. You can imagine. Your reward will be in your paycheck. Greetings, and I want to welcome you all on behalf of the Sheriff's Office here in Hampshire County. I think to sum up all of what Mindy has just said simply means without everyone being involved, it wouldn't work. And as she said way back in 10 years ago, when we decided on the first Tuesday of every month, we were going to sit down with the probation people, the enforcement, the police officers, the social service agencies, and so forth, and come together and review what has happened to people while they've been here and what we expect that's going to happen to them when they leave and where they're going to be, so everybody's on the same page. I simply would like to say to all of you, thank you very, very much for your involvement. Without you, it's a failure. With you, I think we enjoy terrific success. And that's one of the reasons, because one of the people who has really been a driving force behind Reentry and getting us all on the same page across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is going to be our guest speaker today, the Secretary of Public Safety and my former colleague, Andrea Cabral. You're not doing yet. No. I got a lot more to say. Oh, God, yes. How do you like that picture I painted? I'm no joke. I would encourage you to look at some of the programs that are displayed on the bulletin boards here. That they're a credit to what goes on here. We have terrific parenting programs and so many good things. And I'm so happy that some of you came from across the state out here to the Golden West. Usually we're forgotten about, and we don't get too many visitors, you know, but when we get one, we really appreciate it. And we're going to have this breakfast every morning from now on. And I got one hell of an appetite. I didn't get to be this size without eating. But I also want to welcome my colleague from Berkshire County, much wealthier county than we are, and one that gets a huge budget every year. But we want to grow up to be just like him, Sheriff Tom Bowler from Berkshire County. Josh Wall, chairman of the parole board. So if you ever get locked up, he's a good guy to know. He can get you out a little early. I was very, very, very happy to see all the way from Eastern Massachusetts my good friend, the chief of the Cambridge District Court Probation, Angie DiNardo. Where is Angie? We had Angie come out, but we don't let him come inside. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Tipping is allowed, Angie. Throw a couple of bucks under the table. The chief executive of the Massachusetts Sheriff's Association and a very capable guy, Jim Walsh. Representing the county commission, of course, is the Honorable George Zimborski. He is only here because he knew you didn't have to pay. If there was a price attached to it, you better believe he wouldn't be here. My old good friend George. And of course, Fred, it's super to have you here. And I'm telling you, I can't wait to hear your story. But I want to say to all of you, welcome. In Hampshire County, the sheriff controls the weather.
Thanks, Sheriff. Next, we're going to hear from a couple of people who have participated in some of our programs here. And in particular, I think some of the programs that you'll see that are up here, the family reunification program, the kids programs that we run here, and just an opportunity to talk a little bit about reentry in action. So with that, I'm going to introduce Fred Venn.
Good morning. The reentry, I was asked to speak on reentry, and the program and everyone that's involved with the reentry, the treatment staff, helped me with interviews for sober houses that I went to. They helped me get training, information to go to school. And from that, I received a degree in diesel technology. With all the help, they helped me set up Sober Network. Like Mindy spoke earlier about the AA, that every morning we have a chance to go to AA meetings. You know, the other part of it, before I was in minimum status, I was able to meet with a Thursday night group. It's called Big Book, where people come in and they help you, you know, get going in the AA process through the Big Book. That's where I received my first sponsor. We worked together. We did all the steps. You know, let's see. Each one of the treatment staff, it seems like, you know, through the course of my progress, each one of them has their own specialty. You know, it's just amazing on how they work off of each other. You know, they always have, and always have, and still continue to have my best interest at hand first. They go above and beyond. There was some nights that I would see the treatment staff here, 9 o'clock at night, answering questions, setting interviews up for the next day, putting applications in, helping some people get their licenses, go back to school, get information for when they get out. You know, the whole process, it was difficult when I first started because I was real ignorant and I didn't want to be helped. But when I realized that they were trying to help me, not because they had to, it's because they wanted to. You know, and the process takes a lot from both sides. It takes a lot of effort. You have to be able to communicate, and that's something I had a problem with. You know, expressing myself to them. You know, it works both sides. We both have to be on the same page with things, and that helped me enormously with just me, myself, and being able to communicate with my wife. The family focus, what the sheriff was talking about earlier, is family focus. It helped the struggles, my communication. I was terrible communicating with my wife, and I had an opportunity to be able to sit down with my wife Katie and Mindy and several other staff members, and kind of like just express where we're at, what happened. And I didn't realize how much pain that I caused my family. We have 2 boys and a girl on the way, and I thought I was a perfect father, and come to find out I wasn't. I created a lot of pain for my family, and a lot of the stuff that Katie said to me and her feelings towards me from the stuff that I did, it hurt me. And with the help of Mindy and her treatment staff, they enabled me to be able to deal with those feelings and not resort to, going off negative in a negative way, to be able to deal with them. And that comes back to communicating. If I have a problem or I feel something, to communicate. And that's a big thing for me. And, another thing was I didn't realize how controlling I was in our relationship. And, I learned this word, and I never knew it existed, empathy. I never understood it. But now I realize that it's okay to, feel someone else or try to understand where they're coming from. And my wife now, she actually has a voice now, and she can tell me what to do. And I listen, and I do it, and I I love to do it. And that's part of a relationship. Living sober, that is a very big thing. I didn't realize, I was so dependent on alcohol. My life revolved around it. Being sober allows me to be present in everyday life, to be able to deal with stuff that I never could deal with before. I'm a father with a face now. I can be there for my children. I can go and help them with soccer, t-ball, and basketball, whatever. I can help out on their teams. Be present instead of the guy in the corner drinking. I'm a normal. I realize now that I'm a normal, functioning human being, and I wouldn't change that for anything at all. I'm self-sufficient. I work. I don't have to call in all the time because I'm hungover. We have money in the bank. Our bills are paid, and I know how to communicate and talk. Now, the kids program, which I believe A to Z sponsors it, they come in out of their own time, and those are those pictures on the right and on the way out. It's given me a chance to be able to connect with my children and work with them on educationally based activities, to be able to grow with my children. And it's more than just a visit. It's a peace of mind. We can work together as a family, doing stuff that they love, but still teaching them how to do stuff. That program, I think, kept me sane the most. It's just a fantastic program. I spent 2.5 years here, and that's a long time to be without your children. And our children are 5 and 6 right now, and I watched my littlest guy crawl, roll over, walk, and in here, and that's something that's terrible, because sometimes deep down I was there for my first child, but I really wasn't. And this program is so beneficial to the guys that are here. It makes them realize how important they really are. I got to wrap this up because get a little flustered here. I was told to touch base on where I am today. Since I was released from here, I was a state inmate that was transferred here, and we're married now. We got married last May. 2 children, 2 boys. Like I said earlier, a little girl on the way. I'm just present in everything. I don't have to hide from anyone. I don't have to, no more. I wave to people. I talk to people. I'm not afraid to drive by a police officer anymore. Because I was always drinking and I always had at least some kind of alcoholic beverage in me. Now I can drive by and just not worry about him turning around and chasing me. But, the most important thing is, the job I have is I work for a small town, and I'm a mechanic for that town. I'm solely dependent on to maintain the vehicles. And I would not be able to do that if I was drinking. I can only do that if I'm sober and I know what needs to be done. I know it's not difficult for me to say it, but I hate to, I'll just say it. I owe where I am today to the Hampshire Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Garvey, the deputy, Mindy Katie, and all her treatment staff, everyone along the way, inside and out. I sometimes have to reflect on why are people so nice to me? Well, it's because I'm doing everything that's right. And I have to keep telling myself that. I cannot change and go back the way I was. I have to keep going in the direction that, you guys all showed me the way to go. And I'm forever grateful you guys put a lot of effort into me, and I was resistant at first. And it took a long time. It took that full, I think, 2 years for me to realize what needed to be done, and it was well worth it. It was well worth it for me. And at first my incarceration I thought was bad, but I think that's what I needed to be able to be where I am today. And I'm just very grateful, and I'm glad that you guys came here to listen to the story. And this program works. It absolutely works. These people are not here for their own good. They're here for us, the people that need it most. Some people can get it. Some people can't. Some people need help. I needed help. And this is where I got all my help. Thank you.
Job very, very well done. Thank you very, very much for that, Fred. One of the things he touched on was how important it is that from the minute you walk in here, you get these experiences with people. And, like I look in the back towards Colleen, and I look, toward, when you say the people that work with you initially, and then we see a lot of the people as we're leaving the door, but the people that got us to the place that we were at to be able to get the next hand, to bring us to the next place, to get the next hand, and that's how all of this works. And with that, I'm going to ask Tim Mullen to come on up.
Good morning, everybody. Most of you people know me. Some of you know me. Some of you don't. I just want to say I stand before you just as an example of what Reentry will do for you if you allow it to come into your life. I was first incarcerated in 1974, last incarcerated in 2004. Okay, and because of Reentry and the services that were provided to me, today I work for Sheriff Garvey. Okay, which So I'm just here to try to give you some hope and let you know that when individuals come to you that you deal with, and it doesn't seem like they get the picture, that there are a few of us that do get the picture. Okay, there's a few of us that do want to help, and that change is possible. It truly is. You know, I never thought I could change myself, just in and out, doing what I was doing, doing life on the installment plan. And one day I just got tired of it and took the cotton out of my ears and stuck it in my mouth and listened to what was available to me. And today here I stand. The work I do is very, very vital. The work that we do is very, very vital. You know, the collaboration that Mindy talked about with all the agencies, without you guys, it couldn't be done. Okay? The collaboration with probation, DA's office, different programs, halfway houses, substance abuse communities, things of that nature. You know, all those things play a part, you know, down to the smallest little thing, such as an ID, a birth certificate, a social security card, mass health, things of that nature. All those things come into play when it comes to making a successful transition back into the community. And I was grateful to be able to have access to that opportunity because it helped me get to where I'm at today. You know, this works. There's no doubt about it. It works. And I just want to tell you, just keep your heads up and do what you got to do, and we can get it done. And I'll close with that.
Tim is actually our reintegration coordinator here at the Hampshire Sheriff's Office. And he's fabulous at what he does. He is fabulous. Thanks, Tim. Now I'm going to actually ask our court administrator if he would like to come up and share a few words with us. Mr. Spence?
Good morning, and thank you. I'm sorry I missed breakfast. I'm particularly sorry now that I see the breakfast. I'm envious of you all. And I appreciate the opportunity, Sheriff, to join you for this morning's breakfast, or at least for the speaking part of this morning's breakfast. We in the trial court are very much focused on the issues of incarceration and reentry. I learned from Commissioner Lewis Spencer of the Department of Corrections a simple phrase. So I'll start with our efforts around reentry based on his phrase. His phrase is, the best reentry is no entry. No entry. So the first focus for us in the trial court, which we started down the path on about 2 years ago, little knowing that we would be entering into this period of the declaration of a statewide opioid crisis, little knowing that the ravages of heroin would affect our communities as acutely and desperately as they are at this moment. We nonetheless, even then, knew, in many ways, knew Mr. Venn's story. I didn't hear the first part, but I heard the second part. And Mr. Venn's story, it seems to me, is characteristic of the challenges we face, which is, as I heard that story, it's a story of addiction. It's a story of addiction. And we know that 85% of the people who come before the courts for criminal cases today are suffering from some form of addiction. And that addiction breeds crime and destroys lives. We've handled that until a few years ago by massive incarceration. And we've learned through a fairly brutal experiment the failure of massive incarceration as a mechanism for addressing addiction. So the trial court right now is looking to increase to double the number of specialty courts in Massachusetts. By specialty courts, I mean particularly a focus on drug courts, on mental health courts, and on veterans courts, with the largest number of those courts being drug courts. The evidence on drug courts today is hugely compelling. The evidence is overwhelming. There's a fellow who is sort of the national expert on drug courts, Doug Marlowe. Some of you have probably heard him. Doug Marlowe, I remember the first time I heard him speak, he said, "The evidence for the effectiveness and efficiency of drug courts is stronger than the evidence for many of the medications that you all are taking right now." That's how powerful that evidence is. A drug court that is appropriately run and follows evidence-based practice will both liberate individuals and save the taxpayers and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts money, both. Liberate individuals from the slavery to substances and reduce the costs to the Commonwealth. So we are in the midst of a 3-year effort to double the number of specialty courts in Massachusetts. We have 26 specialty courts. I think 21 of those or so are drug courts. In the next 3 years, we want to double that number. We're adding 8 a year, we hope, this coming year and 2 years thereafter. 8 a year would get us then another 24 specialty courts, which gets us to 50. That's the number that New York State has, the number of specialty courts per capita, that is. That's the number of per capita specialty courts that New York State has. New York State has a well-developed and mature system of specialty courts, and they have double the number per capita that we have. We've taken that as our benchmark. Let's use that as a benchmark. We'll see in 3 years, hopefully, when we have all those courts, whether we're meeting the need. Our goal is that any person who is an appropriate referral to a drug court, any person anywhere in the Commonwealth, from the largest city to the smallest town, anyone anywhere in the Commonwealth who's an appropriate referral will be referred to a drug court. So we're going to move from our current system where drug courts serve a particular jurisdiction to what's going to become essentially a regional system, if you will, a system where smaller courts can refer to larger courts. There'll be a catchment area for every single drug court so that every person in Massachusetts is covered by the services available from a drug court. That's crucial because, in fact, the problem of drugs and addiction is afflicting every single part of our state. You know, I go up to Greenfield, Mass., and they're having a huge problem in Greenfield. This is no longer just a large city problem like it was 50 years ago, or 40 years ago, or even 30 years ago. This is an affliction that is affecting every community, even the smallest rural community in our state. So we want to build a system that will then provide for those people for whom it's appropriate an alternative to incarceration. That if they successfully participate in treatment under the supervision of the court, usually for an 18-month period, with weekly or biweekly appearances before the court, regular drug testing, all of that, with the supports of treatment and other kinds of supports, if they succeed in that, they will not be incarcerated. And that then is the beginning of the best reentry is no entry. We also know that pretrial practice has a major impact on recidivism. Turns out, actually, there's a study by the Arnold Foundation that looks at similarly situated populations, populations that are roughly the same age, same crimes, same race, same whatever. Those populations, and then they look at those portions of the population that are not incarcerated pretrial, that are incarcerated for 2 days pretrial, and that are incarcerated more than 5 days pretrial. The higher the rate of incarceration pretrial, the higher the rate of recidivism. The best reentry is no entry. So if we can, the other odd fact, and this is from national studies as well, the national studies say, guess what, in this country, we actually hold people pretrial who are low risk in larger proportion than we hold high risk people. That's how crazy our system is. We release high risk people far more than we release low risk people. So we've established a pretrial task force under the leadership of Commissioner Dolan of the Probation Department and Chief Dawley, the chief of the district court, but involving all of the courts that are involved with criminal justice issues. And we're going to be examining our pretrial practices across the state. And as the judicial members of that committee said at the first meeting, Just tell us what works. Tell us what works. The truth is, our judges are being asked to fashion pretrial approaches without knowing what works. They're each one of them trying to do an experiment. Some of them do all sorts of, some of them incarcerate at high rates. Some of the judges release at high rates. Some of the judges have probation supervision with loads of conditions at high rates. Question is, what works? What works? What actually most likely assures that the defendant will return to court and will not be a danger to the public? And there's been a great deal of work on this. The Arnold Foundation actually has been doing a great deal of work on this, has developed a wonderfully simple pretrial assessment tool that measures the risk of the defendant returning and the defendant's risk to the public, and requires no interview, which adds to the efficiency of the process. And we hope in the next year and 2 years to significantly impact pretrial practice, making sure we have the right person in the right place at the right time. The high-risk person in the right place, the low-risk person in the right place. If we can do that, I suspect we can significantly reduce the amount of pretrial incarceration. As of this point in time, ironically, as incarceration rates post-conviction have been going down, pretrial holdings have been increasing. I suspect this county is like many counties, somewhat 60% of your, I don't know if you're typical, but if you are, then it's about 60% of the people being held are being held pretrial. We suspect a number of those people, a significant portion of those people, would benefit greatly from pretrial treatment, for one thing, which actually, if they then do successfully, holds open the possibility that when they come up for trial, there'll be evidence of their having undertaken efforts to rehabilitate themselves, and that might again mean the best reentry, no entry. In addition, it hopefully opens up beds for the experiment, much more than an experiment, for the practice that the Department of Corrections and the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security have been engaged in, of stepping down corrections inmates to jails for reentry work. But since many of the jails are so desperately overcrowded, that I assume limits the number of such people coming out of corrections. If we can open up more beds for that, then that's a contribution to effective reentry for people who've been serving time in the state correctional system. So those are the kinds of steps we're taking. There's one other thing that we've learned, only learned a little bit about, and then if any of you know more about it, we'd be interested in learning more about it. It's not something we've initiated yet in the system. That is, in some states, there are what are called reentry courts. We've talked about specialty courts as drug courts, mental health courts, and veterans courts. But some states are doing reentry courts, which I assume means essentially court supervision, judicial supervision of the individual after they come out, or as they are coming out and after they come out of incarceration, so that the court can provide that continuing close supervision and support that can help to ensure that the individual is getting the services needed to effectively re-enter the community and become, like Mr. Venn, a contributing member of the society, and at the same time ensure that the participant is actually taking advantage of those services and doing the work they need to do for effective re-entry. So obviously the probation department has an enormous role to play in all of this. We're very pleased and proud to have recruited Commissioner Dolan as our new probation commissioner. He comes out of the Department of Youth Services, where and before that the parole board. He knows the criminal justice system extremely well and has been making, I think, effective progress in restoring, quite bluntly, a probation service that lost its way for 10 years. restoring it to its mission, restoring it to its purpose. The tragedy, by the way, just to add a note on this, the tragedy of an institution that becomes obsessed with patronage hires is not so much that it hires people, there's the concern obviously that it hires people who aren't qualified for the work. But the other more fundamental failing is that the institution loses its focus on mission. It totally loses its focus on its mission. And in many ways, tragically, that's what happened to what was one of the finest probation services in the nation, that it lost its way and lost its focus on mission. So our focus now is very much on mission. We are very much focused throughout not only the Department of Probation, but across the entire judicial system. With respect to the criminal justice system, the key measure of our effectiveness is our impact on repeated crime, on recidivism. Our work has to be work to reduce crime. And by measuring recidivism rates and tracking those carefully, and then seeing what most effectively works to reduce repeated crime. And we already know many of those elements. We'll learn more as we go along. The citizens' investment in the judicial system is clearly then an investment in reducing crime. So we look forward to working with all of you, whether it's on drug courts, whether it's on reentry practice, whether it's on reentry practice, whether it's on pretrial practice. We look forward to working with all of you on reducing crime in this state and restoring lives and restoring our Commonwealth to a condition of health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a phrase that we use a lot around here, and we say, whatever you put before your recovery, you will lose. And you can be assured of that, if you're not clean and sober, you could have a job, but, like Fred alluded to, Tim alluded to, and anyone in the room who knows anything about substance abuse is that, maybe you're not going to go to work because you're hungover. Maybe you're going to go to work and you're going to be ticked off because you're hungover, and that job isn't going to last. And that you can say that about just every area in an individual's life, is that whatever you put before your recovery, you can be certain to lose it if recovery is not first. And overwhelmingly in Western Massachusetts, we see the two big stumbling blocks to recidivism being housing and substance abuse treatment. Unfortunately, this is one of the best detoxes around. They don't exist anymore. We don't have halfway houses to send people to. But that we actually very recently, through the direction of the sheriff and Deputy Kaling, we worked with Secretary Cabral's office to work on one of the burn grants. So we're working toward being able to identify housing that we can transition men into, and in obtaining at least for the next year, the foreseeable period of time during this grant, to be able to secure some housing right here in Northampton to be able to assist us with this transition for people. And with that, I'm actually going to introduce our secretary, Andrea Cabral.
Good morning. I've been doing this work for 28 years. I was a prosecutor for about 16 years. I actually was a staff attorney at the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office when I first got out of law school. I was a sheriff for 10, and I will be the secretary for 2 next January. And I am as struck today as I have been throughout my career at the talent and the commitment of people who are in public service. These aren't really my actual remarks, but I sit and I listen to Harry, and I look at all the work that Sheriff Garvey does, and I know the great work that Tom Bowler does. I know what Jim Walsh does with the sheriffs. I know what all of you do for within this facility and the people from outside this facility who come in to help. And it is not something that the public recognizes or really knows is going on. It is clearly underappreciated, underappreciated in media, underappreciated by the public. Like there's a saying that a fish doesn't know it's in water. All of the remarkable work that people who work on behalf of others and in public service do is the water that others live in. And, you know, people don't see it, but you are remarkable. You are remarkable. It's the essence of humanity to say that part of your work, if not all of your work, will be devoted in helping someone else find themselves and reach their potential, or working on behalf of the public generally. I'm astounded at what the state police do. I have to say, I didn't appreciate you as a sheriff as much as I appreciate you as the Secretary of Public Safety. I am astounded at what the state police do. And so I just wanted to say that because it's really just as remarkable today to me as it was even 28 years ago. How much talent the state continues to be able to rely on, and just how selfless you all are. So I do want to say thank you to Sheriff Garvey, who is absolutely one of my favorite sheriffs, because he's hilarious. And I didn't even know this when I was a sheriff. He is the godfather of county to state step downs. I had no idea. He's now reminded me of it, and he's also talked about, you know, back pay for all of that. You do have my goodwill, if not my money. Yeah. But I do want to thank you all for inviting me to be here, and to thank you all for all of your good work. And you know, Harry talked about all of the studies. We're trying to become a much more data-driven, evidence-based system. You can't go wrong relying on what the science tells you is the right way to go. And there was another study, the Crime and Delinquency Foundation, or Journal, did a study. I think they released it in January of this year. This just floored me. They surveyed national data from 1997 to 2008, and they found that nearly half of black males and almost 40% of white males in the U.S. are arrested by the age of 23. And 20% of white females, 18% of black females, and 16% of Hispanic females have been arrested by the same age, by age 23. Those are the people coming into the system that Harry was talking about. So at last count, we're a nation of roughly 313 million people, and there are nearly 7 million people, or 1 in 44, that are under correctional supervision, incarcerated, on probation, or parole, at an estimated cost of $80 billion a year. Can you imagine what we could do with that money if we put it to something else? Virtually anything else? So fiscally, clearly, even the federal government recognizes this. We can't afford to sustain these numbers. But we're also the world's greatest democracy, so we shouldn't want to. So it's a great thing to stand here in March of 2014 and say that the work of preparing soon-to-be-released inmates for transition back into their communities is now finally considered an essential, integral component of the correctional system. Because we come from a place of, theoretically, that thought punishment was, in and of itself, was cleansing, and that you would realize the error of, I mean, it's sort of puritanical. You'd realize the error of your ways. You'd see that, you know, the community frowned on what you had done, and, you know, God wasn't particularly happy with you, and you would go and sin no more. That's actually not the way we function as human beings, but we retain, so not the way we function as human beings, but we retain vestiges of that sort of puritanical, punishment-oriented notion of how we should treat, even though we know that the genesis of people's bad behavior is grounded in things very, very different, and experiences in their lives that create a decision-making pattern that leads people to a certain thing. And we've done poorly at getting at the root causes, and we've just constantly beat the system. Just keep flogging the system, or the symptom, I'm sorry, of the problem, and keep punishing, even though we know that it doesn't actually work. So we now start to think much more in depth about having a comprehensive criminal justice strategy from soup to nuts, that's built around evidence-based practices, regular outcome measurement, validated risk assessment tools, intervention and prevention strategies, and effective reentry and offender supervision programs. Chairman Wall was the first parole chair to create a risk assessment tool, a valid risk assessment tool for the parole board. That was in this decade. From the turn of the century in 2000 and in 2001, and that was when Sheriff's Office first began to implement their reentry program. So sheriffs have been doing reentry since the turn of the century, till now, when every sheriff's office and the Department of Correction has reentry programs, we've witnessed a very slow, admittedly, but seismic shift in how we do business in law enforcement. And it's sort of tough to know which thing came first, whether or not Massachusetts had certain attitudes toward the criminal justice system and the incarceration followed, or vice versa. But in February, Mass Inc. released a poll that measured for the first time in 20 years what people's attitudes toward the criminal justice system actually are. 20 years ago, people wanted prisons. They said they didn't care how much it costs. And when people are afraid, they will pay any amount of money to not be afraid, and they don't care what the long-term effect of that is. But 20 years ago, it was all about locking people away and incarcerating people, and money, the cost be damned. Now, these attitudes have changed dramatically, and people want reinvestments in rehabilitation. And again, they said, we don't care what that costs. They understand now, hopefully, that the actual cost of incarceration will continue to rise unless there's an investment in rehabilitation. The other thing the public wants is for the system to focus on reintegration, and this was one of the things that I think really caught the eye of Mass Inc. They are concerned about their perception of how unfairly it operates. They want the system to operate more fairly. That's a huge change in attitude. Now, it's heartening to hear that people want the system to operate more fairly, but fairness, even though it's theoretically part of the criminal justice system, is not something that occurs on its own. There has to be a deliberate and consistent effort to achieve fairness. Reentry programs do more than help individuals stay and even flourish on the right path. Reentry programs create fairness in the system. Rehabilitation and opportunity and hope for change, these are all things that reentry programs provide. They are as necessary to fairness in the system as accountability through prosecution and incarceration. Punishment cannot and should not be an end unto itself, but a measured step toward addressing the deficits that contribute to criminal behavior. Sheriffs know this well. They maintain close ties to the cities and the towns in their counties. They know who their high-impact players are. They know which offenders are chronically incarcerated due to their drug and alcohol addictions or mental illnesses. They also know that punishment alone is insufficient as a system response to criminal behavior because the consequences of incarceration, especially when there's no opportunity for rehabilitation, are suffered by more than just the offender. Without effective reentry programs, incarceration alone all but guarantees a lasting, negative, generational impact and a negative community impact. All sheriffs know this. Most of you who work in programs know this, that our jails and our houses of correction and our state prisons have held grandfathers and grandmothers, fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, and grandchildren, sometimes at the same time. They largely hail from and return to the same communities, and their choices frequently impact the daily quality of life in those communities. That's why programs like what Sheriff Garvey has here, Life Skills, Focus on the Family, Connect with Your Child, and all of the other reentry and treatment programs he does are such a big deal. First, the programs are comprehensive. They're partnerships. That's critical because no one agency can be effective alone. These programs marshal the talents of dedicated sheriff's office staff, volunteers, other agencies like probation and parole, not-for-profit service providers, mental health professionals, educators, substance abuse and recovery professionals, and even local businesses. Second, the programs focus on the whole person. In the course of helping ex-offenders attain vocational skills, get in and stay in recovery, reconnect with their families, and prepare for employment, these programs finally get at some of the root causes of criminal behavior, and they provide opportunities to make better choices with better results. Everyone agrees that it is better to prevent a disease than to cure it. We spend enormous amounts of time and donated money, dedicated money on medical research. We work feverishly to develop vaccines and promote specific behaviors like washing your hands and covering your coughs and taking vitamins, because we tell everybody that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This is no different. Reentry programs are an ounce of prevention, and then some. Every formerly incarcerated adult who begins to rebuild his or her life and work skills is able to maintain a job, keep a family, hold a good, solid place to live, is an adult who will be a better parent, a better example to a child, a community, and to themselves. And the work that goes on here every day doesn't just change the here and now, it has a generational impact. And I was very struck and moved by what George Zen said, because he stood before you, most of whom he doesn't know you. And he articulated a level of thoughtfulness, self-awareness, and insight into himself that at least 90% of people who have never seen the inside of a jail cell will never be in touch with. That was remarkable. And when he talked about being resistant to it at first and how long it took him, well, the resistance comes because you're afraid. I mean, most of us go through our whole lives not facing certain things about ourselves because we're afraid to do it. It's just that we're not in a position to be made to do it. But the very definition of courage is being afraid to do what you know you ought to do and doing it anyway. And you did it anyway. I find that remarkable. I find that absolutely remarkable. That's why I think that all of the work that you do in reaching out to people to help them get in touch with what they need to be the best parents they can be, to be the best husbands they can be, the best wives, the best people in a community that they can be, is so remarkable. And it does have a generational impact, because all of the time that George and everyone else who's working hard to do better, just like him, spend with their kids, they're making memories with their kids. Those, and we know this because we're all just kind of grown-up kids. You replay those with your own children. That's the generational impact. Good memories or bad memories, you replay with your own children, and he is making a solid, loving foundation for his kids to pass on to their kids. So there is no question that while there's tremendous value to all of the work that you do in the here and now, don't doubt for a second that it's not going to be, don't doubt for a second that it won't be felt 20 years from now, 30 years from now, by kids you never met who are all grown up and are repeating the good lessons they learned from their mothers and fathers that you helped. So thank you. And I didn't have breakfast, but thanks for that too.
I'm going to ask Chief Ryan and the sheriff to come on up for this next presentation.
My good friend Chief Ryan of the Eastern Hampshire District Court. We have come together, and the Hampshire Deputy Sheriff's Association has established an award where we want to recognize people who have contributed so much into the reentry program. And we thought it most appropriate when we did this to name the award in honor of someone who meant so much to us and had done so much in reentry, and a pioneer and a contributor. And so today, it gives us great pleasure, Bob Ryan, myself, to establish an award in the name of Tom Foley. As many of you know, Tom was a dedicated, hardworking, great probation officer, but even better, a wonderful friend. Just a great guy. And so today, in appreciation of Tom Foley, to the Foley family, in appreciation for the years of dedicated service to the Reentry Roundtable made by our friend and colleague, Chief Thomas Foley, on this date, presented to the Foley family. If Jill and Nancy would come forward. Well, sweetheart, God bless you. God bless you. And in the lobby of the jail and house of correction, or more likely in this room where the round table meets, we will hang this 2014 in memory of Thomas Foley Reentry Award in recognition for outstanding leadership, insight, and dedication to our reentry mission, Sheriff Robert J. Garvey, Hampshire Sheriff's Office, and the Reentry Roundtable team. And we will award this annually in the name of our great friend, Tom Foley.
Good morning, everybody. It's an honor for me to be here today to say a few words about my friend Tom Foley and to honor him as one of the founding members of the Reentry Roundtable panel. I think Tom's initial positive response to the idea of the roundtable might have come as a result of his fondness for Sheriff Garvey, with whom he had an extremely strong friendship. But I think it went beyond just a friendship. I know Tom had a great deal of respect for the sheriff as a correctional professional, and he agreed with the philosophy that the sheriff has as to how he operates his jail. But I think it goes beyond the sheriff. It extends to the staff here at the jail. It starts with Phil out in the front desk, who greets those of us who come here voluntarily, and extends to the program and treatment folks, who those of us who are involved in the round table see their good work all the time. And it then extends also to the security staff here, who create an environment where the good work that is being done all the time here can flourish. So I know Tom had a tremendous respect not only for the sheriff but for the excellent staff that operates here day in and day out. As a matter of fact, Sheriff, I don't know if you were aware, he confided in me on one occasion that he was bewildered, perhaps that's too strong a term, puzzled at least, knowing you as well as he did, that you were able to assemble such a high caliber all-star staff here. I, on the other hand, was not puzzled at all, and never shared that feeling.
You can solve a lot of problems over a couple of years.
Tom was a great guy. He had great personality, a great sense of humor, quick wit. He had a infectious laugh. It was kind of joyful, but at the same time it was mischievous. He was a law and order type guy in some ways, but he also believed in providing people with second chances. And in this business, as most of you know, that often translate into third, fourth, and fifth chances. He was a person who took the reentry panel seriously. I think one of the things that drew him to the panel was the diversity that exists. It's been mentioned already this morning. Police officers, probation officers, parole officers, correctional staff, treatment providers, community service providers as well. All communicating, no one really dominating the conversation at these meetings, all focused on a couple of goals of trying to keep the community as safe as possible and provide the inmate about to be released with the best chance of being successful. It's a pretty simple approach to a very complex and difficult problem. I was at a training session a couple of months ago, and we were milling around before it started, the chief probation officers, and Angie DiNardo, who's sitting out on the lawn, came up to me, and before he said anything, he said, "I really miss Tom Foley." And I mentioned to Angie at a more recent meeting that we were having this event, and he said, "I have to come out here," and of course he's made the effort and has come here as just one of the indications from the chief probation officers, many of whom from Western Mass are here today, as to the high regard that they have held Tom in. So I think we all miss Tom in our own way. We think of him frequently, at least I do, and we certainly all think of him in the first Tuesday of each month when we meet for the roundtable panel. And but the reentry panel continues. It's stronger than ever, and it's just one of the enduring legacies that Tom has left in Hampshire County. Thanks very much.
And Nancy has graciously agreed to be part of the selection process every year for the Tom Foley Award. So we'll look forward to being able to give that out on an annual basis. With that, we're done with our presentations for today. I'd like to thank all of our speakers. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you here. To all of the agencies that are represented here on a monthly basis, thank you for your continued hard work. To those of you who are joining us today, for a first time, we hope you'll come back. Like Chief Ryan just said, we're here the first Tuesday of every month at 8:30. And thank you again for today. It's been great. Feel free to hang around and network for a while. If anybody would... One meal a day. And with that... If anybody would like to tour the facility, we have staff that are happy to bring you around. We do have a big labyrinth out in the back, which we're pulling, we're weeding and things like, well, I'm not weeding, but if you want to take a look at that. And additionally, we do have DVDs of our labyrinth program, and we have some of the actual reentry roundtable, the continuum of care, that I think a number of us saw at the summit. But if you didn't, we have DVDs on both of them available if you'd like to take them along with you. Have a great day.